Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's HFTP ProLinks webinar, Ethic, Morals, and Money, Oh My, with Agnes DeFranco and Terry Price. I'm Barbara Semeraro, HFTP Senior Chapter Relations Manager, along with Brittany Brewster, HFTP Membership Director, and we are hosting today's webinar. In the professional hospitality, accounting, and technology industry, we come into contact with money either in the real sense or in the digital format. Pressure is always present in our daily lives, but pressure with opportunity may lead to rationalization and eventually fraud. How is ethics and our moral compass figured into this picture? We should know about ethics, and we do practice ethics, but can we make sure everyone does the same so we can have a positive, honest, and open work environment? Today's session is an interactive discussion about ethics and how to be role models for our fellow colleagues. And at this time, I'll say we are using the chat feature, so feel free to post questions in the chat. And we are also using the formal question answer if you want to post your questions that way. So today we are joined by Professor Agnes DeFranco, CHAE, and she holds the Conrad Hilton Distinguished Chair at the University of Houston. She served as HFTP Global Board President in 2007 and continues serving on several HFTP councils and is a member of the USALI Global Finance Committee, which is currently working on the 12th edition. Agnes holds a Bachelor of Science in Hotel and Restaurant Management and a Master's in Business Administration and a Doctorate in Education. Terry Price, CHAE, CHTP, has worked in the hospitality industry for 30 years, most of which was spent serving as the controller and CIO at the Grove Park Inn Resort and Spa, which is located in North Carolina. He served as Vice President of Product Management for Senium, a hospitality ERP that provides an integrated resort-wide solution based in Oslo, Norway. He is currently the Director IT Transition and Projects at Davidson Hotels and Resorts. Before Terry's career in hospitality, he worked as a finance officer of a governmental school system and at a local CPA firm. Terry attended Western Carolina University, where he received 2 Bachelor's of Science degrees in accounting and computer information systems. At this time, I now hand the presentation over to our speakers. Welcome.
Well, good morning, everybody. I didn't realize my introduction was that long and in depth, but basically it just means I've got gray hair and I've been around a long time. But today we're going to be talking about professional ethics. And so naturally, the first thing we should probably talk about is what is professional ethics? We need to define what our subject matter is about. And if you Google professional ethic definitions, you're probably going to get a barrage of different versions. A couple of them that I found, Psychology Dictionary defines it as rules of conduct for a specific profession and are generally drawn up by members of a professional board. Reference.com says they are the personal code of conduct that one is expected to uphold in a workplace, as well as the ethics of the organization and industry that he or she works for. And Baraza Carlos, a professional development coach, says it's the moral standards that govern the behavior and actions of professionals. So when we review these definitions, you know, I take issue with some of the verbiage and the wording used in this. The first one talks about it's drawn up by members. I find it hard that a group of people just kind of get together and decide what is ethics and ethical and what is not. The second one talks about its personal code of conduct, you know, and as we all know, when you get people involved with it, it kind of gets muddy and it gets vague and it's hard to define. And then Baraza mentions that it's moral standards, and we all know morality is defined and totally different by a lot of different people. So we work through and we come up with a definition. What should professional ethics be defined as? And this is what we come up with. It's the manner in which the people who place reliance in the performance of your professional duties expect you to respond as it pertains to associated policies, laws, regulations, and agreements. So it's very dry. It's not a sexy definition, but you notice the definition doesn't mention anything about morals. It doesn't mention anything about personal preferences, and it doesn't mention anything about self-governing. It's the professional ethics, in our opinion, should be more of a yes or no question and not a maybe. So, and to simplify the definition, it basically means it's the manner people expect you to respond. The purpose of professional ethics is so our customers and our clients have trust in us. That's the bottom line. Ultimately, they are the judge. Are we being professionally ethic or are we not being professionally ethic? It's not anything that we self-govern. I mean, we can self-govern ourselves, but ultimately the decision is the people that have reliance on what we do, how they expect us to respond on a situation. So creates more of a yes and no type of manner in which we are to judge, because everything is basically judged against physical, definable things like laws and policies and regulations and agreements and stuff. It's not based off of personal preference and stuff. So that's how we feel professional ethics needs to be defined. But how does that translate to us in the hospitality industry? Hospitality is people serving people. It's a one-on-one interaction. Every touch point of our industry is basically a one-on-one interaction. Your front desk is interacting with the customer or the guest as they're checking in. Your server is interacting with the customers as they're eating in the restaurant or at the bar. It's all a one-on-one interaction. So it is next to impossible that personal and professional ethics get blended together, because the people that are in these situations are dealing with other people that are in that situation, and it's hard to define the two and keep them totally separate. And what are some of the issues or challenges that we face in hospitality? So some of the things that we deal with in our hospitality world is things like fine print, on our contracts and our reg cards. Is there little verbiage in there that our customers, if they really paid attention to, would have questioned to? Overbooking. I know that's a business type of question, but in the real world, we are promising a room to a customer. They've booked the reservation, they've paid the deposit, we've promised them a room, but if we do overbooking, that room might not be available. And I know we've all probably been sitting in the airport when they call up and say, we've overbooked this flight, can we have volunteers to go to the next flight? And that's a challenge. That creates some anxiety on some people. Misleading information on menus and websites. Are those pictures real? When you look at your website, are those pictures really reflect what the meal is going to look like? Does it reflect what the room is going to look like? I mean, we all make it look as good as we can, but I've never gotten a Big Mac that looks like the Big Mac I see in the commercial on TV. It never has happened. Serving alcohol inappropriately. Do the bartenders stop service on somebody when they should? Do they not serve somebody because they shouldn't? Does that happen? Overcharging the guests. Do we gouge our guests when they're in a desperate situation? Do we overcharge them because we know we can, because of the situation the guests are in? Is that good? Is that bad? Tips on top of gratuity. Do your servers point out the fact that auto gratuity is already on the check when you're sitting there and you're adding another $10 or $15 tip to the ticket? Do they have the integrity to tell the customer, well, there's already a 20% gratuity on it, just wanted to make you aware before you add the additional? Do they do that, or do they just take the money and run? Safety issues within our hotels. I mean, do we use that emergency exit space as storage because nobody has enough storage at their site? Or do we allow more people than the fire marshal says that should be in the capacity of that meeting room? Sometimes that's where business and ethical processes start colliding. Do your employees take bribes for favors? I mean, we all know the whole story about greasing the palm of the host so we can get at the top of the list of the dining room. Is that fair to the other people that didn't grease the palm? So how do we address these? How do we address these things? So every one of our employees goes through an orientation and when they sign up and work at our hotels and our clubs. And we go through a lot of things during orientations. We welcome them, we do paperwork, we talk about the benefits, attendance policy, we do some training on their work stuff, we go over the dress code, computer uses, all the other things, safety and security IDs. But do we actually talk about ethics during our orientation? Do we discuss to them our company's view on ethics? Do we cover our company's code of ethics? Does your company even have a code of ethics? So looking at your company's, I mean, have you actually examined it? Have you pulled it out and examined what your company code of ethics actually says? Do we know what the ethical standards are? Are they minimum? Or should we superimpose our own set of ethics on top of what the company says? Or do we not superimpose, do we substitute our code of ethics with what the company's code of ethics is as an employee? Do we think our company has the double standard thing, the do as I say and not as I do mentality? I mean, we put it down on paper and we make a nice, pretty document like you see on the screen, but is that really the culture of your company and everything? And of course, there's plenty of examples of companies that did say they were doing certain things and were not, and caused great and huge issues. So how do we teach about ethics? How would we teach about ethics? Because as mentioned earlier, hospitality is people serving people. So ethics among individuals is all over the map, both figuratively and literally, because different cultures view things differently. So it's hard to teach ethics because you're dealing with humans, and humans are unpredictable creatures. We all have different opinions that might change the way that we view, and things change over time. Those of us on the call that may have the gray hair like I do, I don't view the world and I don't view things around me the same way I did when I was in my 20s and 30s, because of everything else around us has changed. What makes your decisions when you're in an ethical situation? Is it your brain? Are you thinking like a digit head where it's a 1 and a 0, or is your heart involved? Whenever you're analyzing these situations. So why is it so hard to teach ethics? Basically because personal ethics can have a degree of fuzziness. There's no doubt about it. When you deal with personal ethics and it's blended in with professional ethics, things can get a little fuzzy. My definition at the very beginning said it should be a yes and no question. But when we blend the personal part into it, which we are all humans, things start getting fuzzy. Is there a minimum or maximum in your level of, is this an ethical, or how you answer this ethical question? Are the standards absolute, or do they become relative? For an example, what would happen if you found a wallet in the parking lot? would the way that you react to this situation depend on how much money is in the wallet? $5, $100? Do you pick it up and return it? Do you pick it up and keep it? Or do you just walk past it? If it was $5, do you act a certain way? If it was $500, would you act differently? Should the ethical behavior or the response be dependent on anything? It shouldn't. We can say that, but why does it? Why would it be differently? And that's because there is no even playing field when you're dealing with personal ethics. You know, we all come to the table with our own set of filters. We all filter the world around us differently. You know, looking at this list of it, individuals' upbringing. It depends on where you were raised, your family values, the culture values I mentioned earlier around you. Religious beliefs come into factor. Knowledge, things that things you know about the world, things you don't know, experiences you've been. Like I mentioned, I think of the world differently now because of all the experiences that I've had over the 20 years of life I've been living and stuff. Gender, men think differently than women. I don't know if this is a revelation to anybody on this session, but men and women do think differently. And then generation. I would venture to guess of the 50 or so people that are on this call, if we looked at the same set of facts and after it passes through all of our individual filters, we will have a different conclusion at the end. I'm not saying the conclusion is going to be massively different. Some of it might be, but ultimately there's going to be 50 different opinions and views at the end of that. And one of those things we just talked about was generation. So what filters come when it comes to the generations? This chart and everything lists out the 4 current working class generations. The traditionalists, the 77 plus, I've taken off. Most of them are out of the workforce now. But if you look at this, the first 3 columns, this survey was done about 9 years ago, 8 or 9 years ago. And they polled the different generations on these questions. Must you lie to succeed? Total significant lie to your spouse. You've kept too much change. You used unauthorized copies of software. You lied to a client. You lied. I love that question. You lied on this survey. That was pretty cool. And how do you feel about you being more ethical than others around you? And you could see how the generation percentages have climbed and changed over the years. So the millennials view these ethical type questions differently than the Gen X and even differently than the boomers. And if I left the traditionalists up there, it is even another degree of change between their generation. So you can see the disparity. Does that make the question answer different for a different generation, or just how people perceive if it's the answer is correct or not? So what's changed? I mean, the answers technically should not change. Should you lie to your spouse? I think everybody would say that should be a no, but 48% of millennials said that they have, because that's just, I don't know why, but that's just the way the generation thinks about these things. And now we have a new generation that's entered the workforce. I know hopefully nobody's employing anybody that's 10 years old, but that's kind of where the generation level is at this moment in time. But we do have, if you look at 18, 19-year-olds up to 25, we've all got probably, especially if we work in the club and the hospitality world, we've got this level of generation in our workforce. Now, so let's look at Gen X just for a half a second here. What would this new group of workers answer those same questions? Now, I don't have any stats. I could not find any polls where we asked those type of questions to the Gen Z group yet. But this is what we know about the Gen Z group is 32% of the Gen Z employees believe that they are the hardest working generation ever. So that's hard. That's hard for me to put my head around. But again, my perspective being over in the far left column of that group that we just looked at, I think of things differently. 34% of them have anxiety about their work expectations and achieving success. 77% of this generation feel stress about work. 36% feel that they have it the hardest of any generation ever. And then 42% of them feel that college did not prepare them in any way to be prepared for the workforce. So again, I don't have stats on how this generation would answer those questions that we just mentioned, but do you see any stressors in this list that would affect how someone would react to those ethical situations? I think only time will tell. So we come up to our first poll because we want to make sure everybody's still awake. I haven't put everybody to sleep yet. So I'm going to turn this over to Barbara to issue our first poll question.
Hi, yes, I just pushed out the first question, and it is, what are some factors that affect personal ethics as discussed earlier? It is a multiple choice. So it could be a particular city and climate where one is born, types of sports and food that one likes, generation, culture, and religious beliefs, and a name given to a person and his or her knowledge. So it looks like people are still answering, and looks like it's slowing down. So I'll go ahead and stop the poll now, and I'll share the results. There you go, Terry.
Interesting. I think the sports guy, do you live in Wisconsin? You must be a Packer fan, because that's the one I was thinking that would jump on that type of question. But the answer is basically C. And I'm going to let Agnes comment on this and take over.
And it's exactly true, because when Tara and I were going through this, we said if anybody takes part B, the type of sports, they must be from Wisconsin, because there's so many diehard Green Bay Packers fans. So we'll see if that's true. But thank you for sharing this and on the polling and so on. So let's go on and look at some other things that we want to talk about. So in this case, we're looking at ethics. Why do we have to spend an hour on ethics? Well, some of you may go, hey, that's my requirement. I've got to check my box for the CHAE and CHTP. But is it only that? And I think that many of us sign up for this is because of other things too, is that we want to have a refresher of what we want to know about ethics and why ethics is so important. Now, we all are ethical people. We know that. We are taught that since we're little, but we also know something, you might have heard of this fraud triangle. And the 3 points of the fraud triangle are pressure, rationalization, and opportunity. And what that means is that when we are under pressure, and if an opportunity presents itself, our brain, not our heart, our brain somehow took over and go, hey, I gotta rationalize this. There's a reason that maybe I need to do this, or that because of pressure, I am short of money, COVID, everything is happening and so on, prices are skyrocketing, and I need my next paycheck to pay my rent, but I just need maybe $200 to tie me over. And I have access to the safe. So maybe I just borrow 200. I'm not stealing, I'm just borrowing, but I'm not telling anybody that, because when my paycheck comes in, I will put back the $200. So you start rationalizing. The next thing you know, little acts like this will start slipping. And ethics or ethical behavior becomes unethical behavior, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and guess what? It becomes fraud. And another thing is that basically there's a greed in every human being. It's just us, because of our upbringing and everything, that we suppress that greed instead of manifesting it. But when we're under pressure, again, things happen. And so we begin to slip. And in business, as we know, bad ethics can turn into fraud very easily. So Terry and I found a few cases we want to share with you as to what are some of these frauds that we have been seeing. I don't know how many of you are from Texas or have driven through Texas. If you have driven from anywhere from Dallas to Houston and Houston to Dallas on I-45, and on the bottom there, you see the Corsicana Interstate 45, and that is the Corsicana bakery right on Interstate 45 that's called Collins Street Bakery. And there's a fraud case on this particular bakery. Now, again, guys, remember, it's a bakery. It has one right on I-45. If you drive into Corsicana, there's another one, and they have two other locations. So it's a bakery, not a big, company, hotel company, and all that, and so on. And they are quite famous in their food items, and they have been on TV. Here you see is on the Food Network and also on the program that's called Chew. And I have other lists too that I found that they have been on, gosh, ABC, History Channel, Netflix, Wall Street Journal, CBS Morning News, Washington Post, New York Times, Dallas Morning News, Southern Living, Boston Globe, and I'm sure that one that you guys have probably read when you're waiting in your dentist's office or your doctor's office, People's Magazine. They've been featured on there. And the reason is because of the famous fruitcake. And now they're making a miniature parts too, so you don't have to buy a big fruitcake. And somebody goes, oh, yuck, why do I want fruitcake? They're dried. And isn't fruitcake the one that you only give to somebody? So the last person who got it and they tasted it was so dry and all that. But I can tell you, I don't like fruitcake. But when I first tasted this, they are so moist, that's totally different. So that's why they are well known. So this is one of the picture of the location that's on I-45. They have a little cafeteria there too, a cafe there too. And this is the one I love the most because they do bake their baked goods every day. And so they take it out a few times a day. I love the brownies, love the cookies and so on. But you might go, what happened? Well, this is what happened. Unfortunately, they have been also featured on the FBI website. What happened is their corporate controller, Mr. Sandy Jenkins, over a 10-year period of time, embezzled over $16 million. Remember, this is a bakery, $16 million. And some of the things they found later on was that he took 223 trips on private jets. Now, you might ask, if somebody took that many trips on a private jet, wouldn't somebody ask a question, why can he afford all that? Well, because he said, my cousin actually owned those jets and he let me fly on them, okay? So look at other things. He purchased 38 vehicles, including Lexus, Mercedes, Bentley, and Porsches. How many of us will purchase 38 vehicles in 10 years? And those brands too. He spent $11 million on a Black American Express card. And I don't know, but I would never qualify for one because you'll have to be asked to join and you have to spend about $500,000 on your regular American Express card before they will ask you to join. And some of you may know that the initiation fee, I believe, is $10,000 and it's $5,000 per year just on the renewal fee. They spent also about $1.2 million at Neiman Marcus. Now, this is the one that just gets me. There was an article that says that when they walk into Neiman Marcus in Dallas, the salespeople know that, and they even have a nickname for that. They call Sandy fruitcake because of how famous the fruitcakes is in Collins Street Bakery. And they call his wife Cupcake. And they told the police at the end, why did they stop shopping in Neiman? Well, not because they didn't want to get caught. They said because they ran out of things to buy. It is that bad. And when they were caught, and you can see all these luxury items that are being recovered. Now, he was sentenced to 10 years, and unfortunately, he passed away in prison in 2019. But these things happened. Now, you may also think that things only happen in big hotels, big country clubs. Not so. This is also on the FBI website, and it's about a sleep-in. And what happened is that Renata Nicole Anise is an employee, and was an employee, I should say. And in over 6.5 years, she embezzled over $1 million. And she basically used her personal credit card and bank debit card and insert those numbers so that when customer payments were directed to the hotel, it actually directed to her personal accounts. And what did she do? Well, she was caught. And when she was caught, she was sent to jail, obviously, but only for 5 years. And see, that's why people are committing this crime, because you're only sentenced for a few years. And even for 16 million, he was only sentenced to 10 years. Now, the sad thing is this. The sleep-in owner sold the hotel in 2013 because he just thought that it was poor financial performance. But later on, he found out that he lost $1 million just because of embezzlement. I know some of you are also from the club area, and you might think that, well, maybe it happens in the food service, happens in hotels, but clubs, we are very good. Well, most of you are, but let me show you one of these examples. If you're in the Dallas area, and I'm sorry that most of my things are in Dallas, Texas area, because that's where I'm from. So when I try to find examples for my students, these shows up too. And so Terry and I decided that these will be 3 that we can talk about. This is in Westlake, Texas, and it's the Vaquero Club. And if you look at the residents, this is very distinct and private neighborhood, because these are former and current residents. Look at the names that you see over here. And the first one, you guys might have heard of Mr. Rex Tillerson. He wasn't only the CEO of Exxon, but he was also the former Secretary of State. And the reason why I put him over here is because he bought a house from a famous baseball player. And when that transaction was transacted in Dallas, it was noted that is at that time one of the biggest transaction in residential real estate in the Tarrant County. So there are some pictures too, and you can see that it's built for a baseball player because they even have an indoor baseball practice, and you can see the memorabilia on the right-hand side. Then if you look at their game room, gosh, if I have a game room and have a pool table, that's luxury for me already. But look at their game room. They have a card table on the end there too. They have video machines also. That's fantastic. And also take a look at this. That's the swimming pool of this one house. So what happened in this country club, in this gated area? Well, and by the way, this is the office. What a view too. So this is what happened. The CFO was fired, but what made this happen? Well, it was him, obviously, that he absconded $5.4 million. And he wrote a 5-page letter to the board and his GM and told them that that's what he's been doing. And that actually, we don't have any cash. Although on the balance sheet, it looks like they have a lot of cash. And they were in such poor financial health that this happened, as you see, on February 27, 2020. That was when we first was hit by COVID, because COVID started, we closed down in Houston, at least we closed down on March 9th. So it happened right before COVID. And the club has no money. Just for the club to keep on operating, the 400 members or so have to be assessed to pay up the 5.4 million. And they were only given a 10-day notice to pay an assessment of $14,000 if you're a golf member and $7,000 plus for a social member. Now, for regular people like me, that's way over my monthly salary. There's no way I can just in 10 days pay $14,000. But as you know, those the people living in this area is quite well to do, so are able to do that. But can you imagine all the money that was being absconded? So those are just some example. And that is why HFTP is so serious about all of us. Make sure that we are updated and being reminded of our code of ethics. And by the way, there's a link over here, and if you guys can access it, or even if you just Google and look for HFTP and the CHAE and CHTP code of ethics, you have a 3-page document right here. So you can print out the 3-page document on all these things that we're supposed to do. And it's not anything that you don't know, it's just that we have to be reminded. And if you think 3 pages is long, wait till you see what we have at the University of Houston, because we are a state organization, we're an educational organization. I was looking at it, we have the Texas Government Code, Texas Education Code, Texas Penal Code, then the UH System, Board of Regents policies, and then the system administration policies, And every year we have to be certified and recertified at the beginning of the school year on about 6 or 7 items. And one of the items is our ethical behavior. So these are the things that we have to always have it on the top of our mind. And so one thing that we need to remember and be cognizant of is that it is not just about, oh, I need to be doing the right thing and on one day. It is not that. It is what Terry said previously, the moral issues to when we talk about green standards, sustainability issues, corporate social responsibility. We all need training, and that's why we have this session that we have with you all. So how can a business promote an ethical environment? So Terry actually has prepared 2 cases that he wants to share with us and have you answer some questions too to see how we feel and so on. So Terry, if you can take over from here and talk about the 2 cases.
All right. Thanks, Agnes. So let's look at a couple of examples here. And let's see if we can apply some of the things that we've been talking about to see what the proper response needs to be for this. So Debbie's an insurance adjuster for the XYZ insurance group, received a phone call from the Henderson family after a massive storm went through their area. Mrs. Henderson described how the storm ripped off a large section of the roof of their home and they have lived in for the past 20 years. The Hendersons have had home coverage for their home with XYZ the entire time. The wind and rain damage rendered the home and contents a complete loss. After the phone call, Debbie analyzed, our insurance adjuster analyzed the file for the Hendersons. The policy that the Hendersons have indicates that there must be a roof inspection every 10 years, and the Hendersons were 2 months past due on that inspection. So these are the facts of our case at this point. So what we want to do is let's have a quick poll. What do you think is the proper response to this question? So Barbara?
Hi, everyone. Let's see, I just launched the polls. Hopefully everybody can see it. From what I understand, some people couldn't see the last one, which I apologize for. But the question is, what is Debbie's ethical response? This is a single choice one. Pay the claim, deny the claim, request a backdated inspection, or change policy dates so it qualifies. And it looks like people are still responding. And I'll give you just a few more seconds before I'm going to end the poll now. And I will share the results.
Okay, so it says 22% of you said to pay the claim, 66 deny the claim, 13 request backdated inspection, and then nobody said to change the policy dates. So what is the correct answer? What is the correct answer in this situation? So let's go back to our definition, where our definition says that professional ethics is what does the user expect us to do as it comes to laws, policies, agreements, and any other governance situation. So if you look at the policy that was the contract, Debbie's professional ethical response should be like 66% of you said, deny the claim, because that's what the policy reads, But does that feel right? Does that feel right when you've got a customer that's only missed it by 2 months, but yet they, been a customer for 20 years, paying their claims on time, or paying their insurance policies on time? And does that feel right that they should be denied for that? So what would the right answer to that be? And let's see, go. So, whoops. So what was the right, what should the right response be? What would feel better in this? This isn't a poll, but I mean, should they just pay the claim? She's been a customer for 20 years. And so should we just pay it? Or should we request an exception from management on behalf of the Henderson family? So the right response for Debbie is her ethical response is to deny the claim. But that doesn't prevent Debbie from going and requesting an exception. And if the company decides that due to their payment history and longevity, and it's only 2 months out of compliance, then naturally they can make the choice and the decision to pay the claim for the Hendersons. However, Debbie, as the insurance provider, can't make that choice because she is governed by the rules and the policies and the agreements that her insurance company has enforced. So, but anytime that you're applying an ethical decision, like we mentioned, there should be more yes and no instead of maybe. Applying compassion to do what you can to help just makes you a good human. There's nothing wrong with that. To do what you're capable to do outside of breaking any of those policies and or laws, we all should do that. That just makes us better people. All right, our next case. Let's see what's going on. Hang on. Here we go. All right, I've got it. All right. I thought I had it. Here we go. Technology. We got to learn these things. All right. Second case. Joyce, a controller at a country club, has been employed for 6 months. While reviewing the financial statements, she noticed that the general manager of the club had 15 charges in the restaurant last month. When Joyce was first hired, she reviewed the club policies and recalled that the general manager was entitled to eat in the restaurant, but not to exceed 5 times in a given month. The next day, Joyce had the opportunity to talk to the chairman of the board and brought up the issue with the restaurant charges. The chairman told Joyce that the GM was going through some personal issues at home, so it was okay that he was using the restaurant more than normal. So our last poll is, has Joyce completed her ethical responsibilities?
Let me go to that one. And I hear that people are still having problems seeing the polls. I just launched it now. It is a yes or no. So if you can't submit for some reason, go ahead and put it in the chat. And the chat is being recorded also for your participation. So right now I'm seeing people put yes in the chat.
Right.
And so I'll go ahead and end the poll.
Okay.
And share the results.
So it looks like the results saying that 76% of you said yes, 24% of you said no. Now, if this was a live presentation, we would have a discussion about this because ultimately the answer is yes, knowing what we know. One thing that might not be, it would change the factor on this is, does the chairman of the board have that authority, which I did not indicate in this. So the assumption is the chairman of the board does have the authority to override the policy. So therefore, Joyce did what she needed to do. She reported the issue. She got the exception, just like we talked about the exception in the insurance claim. She got the exception approved. Therefore, she has completed her ethical responsibility in this particular situation. All right, so now I'm going to turn it back over to Agnes.
Thank you, Terry. So we're going to look at the time, and we know that we are very close to our end time. So there's only 6 things we want to share with you as a takeaway for you to finish off today. And we call it the 6 keys to an ethical business environment. So the first one is, do you have a stated code of ethics at your workplace? So HFTP has one, and I just shared with you that the University of Houston has one. Is it transparent? Do people know where it is? Will we taught about it? Will we trained on that? So make sure that you have a stated code of ethics. Then secondly, as we talked about it, we've got to have it on the forefront. Communicate, train, make sure that people are aware of it. And some places even put a little corner called the ethics corner in their monthly newsletter or something like that to make sure that employees are always thinking about ethical behavior. But training and communication is not just it. We've got to keep on doing something more. The top management have to support it. They have to do the same thing. They walk the walk, talk the talk, and make sure that there are tools that if something happens or are not ethical, that we can report it and report it with anonymity and safety. So there's no, backlash. If I raise my hand and go, well, I think so-and-so did something. Well, but then again, the next thing, everybody knows that I was the one that talked. Well, that's not safe for me to say that. So people will not want to come out and be forward about those. Then another thing is to make sure that you don't only pick the bad things and tell everybody around, but also look at the positive things. If somebody is doing something right, doing something ethical, make sure that you praise the employee and let people know about that too. Make sure that you have it on their performance review so that they know that these are behaviors that they want, the company wants you to have. As Terry said at the very beginning too, is the behavior that people expect you to exhibit. So make sure that you also reward positive reinforcement. And of course, if somebody does something wrong, you've got the discipline. You can't just go, well, yeah, so-and-so, Agnes reported that somebody did something wrong. But yes, she's just being paranoid, or she's a gossiper. She always does that. Just ignore her and don't look into the case or don't discipline, then people will not bring those cases forward. So make sure that discipline is part of it. And last but not the least is we've got to continue and upgrade things, look at new things and so on, continuous improvement. And so with that, those are the 6 take homes that we have for you, that Terry and I are really thankful that you spent the last 15 minutes or so of your time with us. And as Barbara read at the very beginning, our goal is to make our world, not just your personal, but your workplace, an honest, open, and amazing place. So we thank you for your time with us.
Yes, thank you so much. If you have any questions for Agnes or Terry, please feel free to put them in the chat or in the question answer. I did see one comment, excuse me, that said, if I were Joyce, I would get writing from the chairman of the board, so it was documented.
That's very good. Yeah, I didn't mention the CYA thing. So yes, for sure, she should definitely make sure that it was in writing and not just a casual conversation, because people do have Sun-timer's disease when it's convenient for them. That's true.
Mm-hmm. So, and like I said, if anybody has a question, otherwise, we have your contact information here on the screen. And of course, people can always reach out to HFTP and we can provide the information too. So, Agnes, Terry, any other final thoughts, comments?
Barbara, there's something to just pop up on the Q&A.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that CSV would contribute to ethics adherence inside our hotels? I'm wondering, CSV.
Or are we talking about corporate social responsibility? CSR?
It says CSV. So shared value. Corporate shared value, maybe.
So we definitely feel that those are important, even when you're talking about sustainability or anything that you're doing. So if you say that you are using green things, you're saying that you're recycling things, but you're just saying it, but you're not doing it, that's ethical behavior that's not correct. It's really unethical behavior that you lead people to feel that or think that your company is doing all these things, but you're not. And ESG and CSV, ESG, all those are very important because it is in Europe, they're doing a lot better job in that. In the US, we are feverishly chasing after to make sure that we are in compliance too. And it's not just in compliance, it's the right thing to do. So as Barbara said earlier, I'm also on the USALI committee, and even on that part, some of you may know that the utility schedule 9 that is on the 11th edition, we have changed it and proposed it to be called energy, water, and waste. And that is going to talk about the sustainability efforts. And some of you who are with the bigger hospitality companies that is a couple years into it already, maybe 3 years, in fact, that they are not just publishing a 10K report, they're also publishing an annual report on their ESG initiatives. You know, what have they done for society? What have they done for their employees and the governance and so on? So this is coming down the pipe, and we all should be embracing that. So you will hear this more and more. So thank you for bringing that up for discussion.
And in today's world, social issues and social pressures are a constant change to our corporate direction. That's just the world we live in. You know, corporations have to adapt to social issues that are out there, and they should, and which changes what is, like I said, how does the people expect us to respond? That is the ethical behavior, and our companies have to look at what the social climate and the social public are expecting us to do as part of our ethical response. And so that's why it's a living document, as Agnes said earlier. It's something that you can't just print it out, throw it on the wall, and poof, there it is. It's got to be reviewed all the time, because as we know, companies get shut, the doors get shut because of their direction on a social issue, and you know, things like that. So we do have to adapt and use social direction as a guideline in a lot of cases.
And Tara is correct, especially when it comes to sustainability. And I'm sure that many of you who are in the hotel part might have experienced that already, that some of your clients and even governments who are clients coming to your property to book a function, they might be asking for those metrics too, of, you know, how do you, do you do any sustainability efforts? You know, what do you do with the waste and all those and so on? They're asking for those metrics as well. So that's why we have to just not say that we do something, but actually put our heart and soul in it and do the right thing.
Okay, well, we have another question that came up. And it's a lengthy one. So that's a good argument. I would have to say that when hotels fail to follow their own policies, their social value policies, or not employing creating shared value practices to some degrees, then that leads itself to less care to ethics by the local communities, at least from what this person has seen. I've also agree that the environment and society are way too complicated. It's very difficult to keep up with these times.
It is.
It's correct. It is not easy, but
I mean,
that's
once
why
social
we're doing
media,
it.
yeah, once no social media tweet can change the direction people expect you to react to. And as we know, we work in companies and we work with large groups of people. It's hard for us to be that dynamically flexible. And sometimes it takes time to have a corporation to spin up any kind of program, but yet the people expect it to be there instantaneously.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, we're about at the end of our time here, and I see with inside the chats, there's been a lot of positive response to the information that you have presented today, and a lot of thanks. And I too want to thank you. And I also want to say that next week we have a webinar. It has to do with balance sheet reconciliations, and registration is now open for that. And also High Tech Orlando is at the end of this month. It starts on June 27th and goes through June 30th. So stop by the HFTP member world, which is located on the exhibit show floor, and say hello to either Brittany or myself, and also other HFTP members. Many of you are collecting continuing education credit hours. So please note that you will receive an email tomorrow with the certificate language on it. Please keep that for your reference. And if you have any concerns as to if you did not receive that email, reach out to me here at HFTP, and I can forward on that certificate to you. And with that, it concludes today's broadcast. So thank you, Agnes.
Everybody.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.